So now let's start with the registry pattern. So the registry is a sequence of the prototype. So registry is basically what we call a kind of like a store which provides a way for the prototype to store their prototypes. Okay, so I'll explain you in detail how the intuition, even I'll explain you how the motive behind this registry. Okay, let us say there is a graphical object, background object. Let us imagine there is one game, let us say it's a Call of Duty or PUBG or something like that. There could be a background objects, it could be a trees, mountains or buildings. Okay, we wanted to store multiple prototypes. Okay, so here in the previous scenario, if you want multiple trees, there is only tree, then that is fine. Then let us say there is a mountain, you cannot store tree prototype in mountain. Similarly, you cannot store mountain prototype in buildings. So in order to create a prototype, first we need to first identify the types of the background object, then only we need to create a prototype. So in order to identify those types, first we need to store them in some location first of all, because we want to store and get them. So that is the motive behind this prototype design pattern. Okay, let us, for example, let us go with Call of Duty Modern Warfare game, where we have a multiplayer mode to play the game. So in that multiplayer, so for example, if you go to Call of Duty game, we have something called multiplayer section. We have something called multiplayer section. When we go to multiplayer section, there are different types of games under the multiplayer. So one of that game is team deathmatch, or some other match could be shipment 24/7. Some other match could be 8 versus 8 mosh pit, something like that. So in this case, let us consider there is a team deathmatch. So under the team deathmatch, if you want to play the game, first it will ask you to select different maps. So the maps could be meat yard, it could be shipyard, it could be high-rise building. So in order to give you those maps, first they need to store it somewhere, right? So they are under the team deathmatch, they are storing the maps somewhere, and they are giving you the respective types. They're giving you the respective types to create those interfaces. Okay, for example, meat yard can have different interface, shipyard can have different interface, and high-rise building could have different interface, and there could be some common objects between them. Okay, but obviously all are not same, right? Because each map have their own separate features, separate objects. Some could be common or some could be an extra. So to identify the type, to create the clone, first we need to identify the type. So that's the intuition behind it. And store our prototype, we get them whenever we need it. And one more example is Docker registry. If you see the Docker registry, first they will create an images in the particular registry. For example, it could be some images, uh, you know some SQL related things, or it could be some Linux based or Windows based images, depending on the type. They're first registering it in the some store, and whenever we wanted to get it, we can directly get that images, and we can apply that in something called Docker basically. Okay, and one more thing is localization. If you see the internationalization or localization, for example, we are displaying some text in some browser, or some displaying some text in some machine. So we want that text to be displayed under different languages. So what we need to do is, first we need to store them, and we need to give some codes basically. For example, if it's in English, we have an English JSON. If it's a Hindi, we have Hindi JSON. If it's a Tamil, we have Tamil JSON. So first we will store it in some JSON types, and then basically we will try to get them whenever we need based on the language type. We will render that specific JSON based on the language type. So if you see the pattern, you need to create first and get that specific patterns based on the types. Okay, so these are the things. So the implementation will be, first thing is we will implement an interface to, obviously first thing is to store the prototypes and get the prototypes. In order to store the prototypes and get the prototypes, fundamentally we need a type identification first. That's the reason why we are sending a type parameter. And when we are calling the class bg registry, we need to get and store the objects. Okay, so register, so fundamentally we have register, deregister, modify and insert. For the register is nothing but the store and get. Deregister is basically wanted to delete them, modify and insert, and also we can modify and insert them. So here we don't have delete method, but in observer design pattern there we have something called delete also as well. If we, for example, if let us say if we are developing an application which supports Android and supports only Android, and it will not obviously it will not support iOS, right? So by mistake, if we have installed an iOS application in Android by mistake, obviously we need to first delete that prototype, right? So there should be a provision to delete or edit or something like that. So those kind of things we have a provision. We have provision in another design pattern, but not now. So here we are only discussing the storing and getting part. Okay, yeah. Now let's go to the code part.